We are on air. Okay, good morning. If you agree, we are going to start the conference of today. Welcome to the Relief Final Conference, and thanks for your interest in attending this event. I am Ana Muñiz, the project manager of Yagaer, the coordinator of the Relief Project. It is a pleasure for us, for all the consortium, and also for contractors and the project officer, to share with you the results of this 4-year project, in which we have worked very hard in order to find solutions for the self-management of chronic pain through the implementation of a pre-commercial procurement process. We have organized the program in small presentations to cover all the content that we would like to share with you today, with enough time for questions, because our idea is to have a session as much interactive as possible. So please ask your questions at the end of each presentation. Remind that your microphones are mute, so you should ask your questions and doubts by using the question panel that you have on that you can see on your screen. I would like to introduce you our panelists of today. First, here you are Orestis Kaliasindis. He is the project officer of Relief Project. He is from the unit H.3 e-health, well-being and aging of DG Connect of the European Commission. Orestis will present the call under which Relief was selected, as well as other relevant PCP projects from previous and subsequent calls. He will also moderate the roundtable to discuss good practices and lessons learned from the PCP process that we have planned for the end of the conference. Myself, Anna, I will give you an overview of the project, explaining you main results achieved during the implementation of the Relief PCP process. In the middle of the slide, you can see the buyer group of the project. Louis Potel, head of the International Department of GIP Resat in France. He is the lead procurer of the project. José Carlos Prieto of the Research Management Area of Servicio Andaluz de Salud in Spain, and Rolf Karsten, head of Rehabilitation Medicine and Multidisciplinary Penn Center of Uppsala University in Sweden. They will explain how the field testing was developed and main conclusions obtained during this phase of the project. And besides, they will participate in the roundtable to sharing with us the knowledge and experience acquired during the definition and implementation of the Relief PCP. Besides, Louis Potel will be the moderator of all the conference. At the bottom of the slide, you can see our contractors. On the left, Nomon Informatics, represented by Antonis Bilis, the Research and Development Manager, and Fotis Gonidis, IT Project Manager. And on the right of the slide, you can see Tech4Care, a consortium represented by Carlos Chiatti, Chairman of Tech4Care, and Nat Martenson, CEO of MyThings AB. They will present, of course, the two solutions developed in the project and their commercialization plan for the future. And they will also take part in the roundtable to share and give the point of view of the contractors related to the key lessons and recommendations in a PCP process. Last, from the practical point of view, I would like to inform you that the session will be recorded, and we will upload the videos in the Relief website. And besides, we will produce a newsletter to share all the contents and results of the discussion of today. So I encourage you to subscribe to receive it in your emails. You can find the details for the subscription also in our website. That is all from my side. Thank you again for attending the Relief Final Conference. It's really a pleasure for us. And please, Orestis, you can proceed with your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much for inviting. Apologies. Welcome to the attendees, first of all, and apologies if you see me constantly looking some other way. I'm joining through a private device and the camera is slightly to the left of my screen. So since you kindly saved me from introducing who I am and for whom I work, I would go directly to the second slide. First, expressing my pleasure that I am here to see the conclusion of the RELIEF project. A PCP, one of our very early ones in Horizon 2020, the Commission has been supporting innovation procurement through various types of actions and programs, also before Horizon 2020 through FP7 and SIP. However, Horizon was a new and quite revamped program, and this was the first PCP call in healthcare we had in 2015 for my unit when I was still not here. And what we tried to do through this call, you see the title, was finance R&D for ICT solutions contributing to the self-management of health and disease. What main challenges did we try to tackle through this call? We wanted to empower citizens and patients to manage their own health and disease, hoping that this would improve, well, first in improved health outcomes for them and longer and healthier lives. We are the aging unit as well of DG Connect. And also to more cost-effective healthcare systems, as you know that the burden was already a lot on healthcare systems before COVID, and pushing the management of chronic diseases outside the healthcare providers as much as possible was also one of the targets. So this was our call, and of course we wanted to attract health procurers to finance R&D for such solutions, R&D which would lower their costs and would mostly place the patient in the center of this process. In the next slide, you see, yeah, this one. Great. This wasn't an accident. It was systematized a few years later from a policy point of view, with the Commission's communication on the digital transformation of health and care, and projects like RELIEF fall under Pillar 3 of what we're doing, what is called digital tools and data for citizen empowerment and person-centered care. Since 2015, we have had numerous calls until today and various types of actions supporting this. And PCP and PPI are crucial for research and deployment of such solutions. That's why we value them. Next slide, please. So what did we have as a result of this first call? This is not a study of what we achieved through all our calls during Horizon 2020. It's quite early enough. You see that our projects from 2015 are finishing now. This is more a look at what we wanted to achieve through that call and how it went and what the lessons learned are. And we aimed to fund 4 projects. You can see that it was a rough call. We lost 2 in the process. Smile, we lost it as a procurer left before grant agreement signature, and the consortium decided that it wasn't able to replace them. Then we lost Empathics as well after the completion of phase 1. And there the issue was the consortium's assessment that the solutions provided after phase 1, designed after phase 1, were not innovative enough. So we do have our champions now, which are Magic and RELIEF. Magic finished in Q4 2020, and RELIEF is finishing this month with 3 and 2 solutions respectively after phase 3, and we're very happy about that. Next slide, please. So what did we learn from that first call? Very quickly, as time is tight today. Initially, it was slightly difficult for applicants to understand how the PCP instrument works, and external expertise was needed in many cases, so that we helped the consortia go through it with less problems. As it was evident in my comments, in my earlier comments in the previous slide, the withdrawal of procurers was a particularly difficult thing to tackle. It still is a very difficult and time-consuming problem to solve from our side, especially as we're dealing with grants. And if a procurer from one region leaves, then there is a big problem from the consortium side to replace them and the input that the whole region or a country brings in the process. The preparatory phase and the drafting of tender documents for such procurement is a very important part, as it paves the way for a smooth implementation of the 3 phases later. But it also defines constraints that later might block R&I from achieving some elements in the process. Frequent changes in the actors, either in the procurer side or even at the Commission, can disrupt in a negative way the implementation of projects. This is something we realized as also our unit had to move from Brussels to Luxembourg, and lots of people were replaced. Commitment of decision makers in the participant organizations is always important and needs to be renewed, especially if projects are prolonged for a long time. And testing and whatever revolves around it, including ethical authorizations, patient recruitment, and so on, must not be underestimated when preparing PCP proposals. Of course, another issue is a balance between embedding innovations in healthcare, which is very dynamic, and the length of a PCP process. Sometimes we want to be flexible and allow the R&D to take place and prolong the projects, but also then the market sometimes provides solutions sooner than the end of the project. Next slide, please. Well, so since that first early call, we had more calls in DG Connect. We've signed 7 PCPs, and we have lost none, and they are ongoing, and we are very happy about that. And then in the next slide, you can see also that there were several other PCPs signed in the healthcare sector within DG Connect, but not supervised by my unit or within DG Research. And we are also happy that these are ongoing. The experiences then is that applicants become more and more experienced in the instrument. We get better proposal both in structure and in content and in the innovation. The Commission itself also has introduced templates to help where appropriate or improve them in the process. We also improved our own IT tools to manage these projects because it was a very heavy workload. They were not tailored at the beginning for the particularities of the PCP project. The procurer's withdrawal remains the main problem we have to face. So initially we pray for this not to happen. We are a bit more experienced in that anyway, but we wish that no project has to face this. We do see the competitive element of the PCP as something very important, as it ensures that in the end projects are left with at least 1 or 2 solutions in case contractors drop out in the process. We do encourage consortia to bring in multidisciplinary teams, so clinicians, procurement experts, legal experts, and IT experts where appropriate, so that they have the capacity to manage the multitude of challenges a project like this has. Now I've left 2 questions in the end, which I will not answer. What we have to look forward is what the impact of COVID-19 will be in a process like innovation procurement and PCPs more specifically. And then, of course, we will all look in the next couple of months what let's say the details of the Commission's funding program to support innovation procurement will be. Unfortunately, I'm not at a liberty to discuss those as they are still being negotiated with member states, but there will be several programs, the new version of Horizon, Digital Europe, the European Innovation Council amongst them, and there will be support. So we hope that this will help also the participants either in the demand or in the supply side to have opportunities and be supported in this innovation process. And that's where I'll stop actually, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Orestes. I am Anna again. I'm going to give you an overview of the RELIEF project. Our project was funded under the call that Orestes has already explained. It started the 1st of February of 2016 and ended in March of this year. We have two main objectives. First, to develop innovative digital solutions for improving the self-management in chronic patients through technology. So to empower patients by using the e-health solutions. And second, and also very important, to demonstrate that public health administrations can innovate and foster the e-health market by using the pre-commercial procurement process. We are a multidisciplinary and well-balanced consortium with complementary technical and scientific skills. We are 5 organizations from 3 different European countries, Spain, Sweden, and France. The Bayer Group is formed by 3 public health procurers. The lead procurer is the Réseau des Acheteurs Hospitaliers in France. It is a public group purchasing organization that's acting at national level. It has a third party, the Hôpitaux Universitaires Saint-Louis-Lariboisière Fardin-Vidal, in which the field testing in France was developed. The second procurer is the Servicio Andaluz de Salud. In Spain, it is an autonomous organization integrated in the regional government of Andalusia, a region in the south of Spain. It has a very relevant network of integrated care services. And the third procurer is the Uppsala University Hospital, one of the largest hospitals in Sweden. As preferred partners, we are a research group, the Psychology, Health and the Net of the Open University of Catalonia, created with the aim to analyze the psychological aspects associated with the use of ICT in relation to health, and also Jagger as the coordinator. We are an international procurement company with the mission to add value to our clients, supporting them in improving their procurement processes. As you know, we are a PCP project, so obviously we have implemented the PCP process. The pre-commercial procurement, as you know, is a joint procurement between contracting authorities from different member states based on common topics, on topics of common interest. It is very important that you know that the key requirement of a PCP is that no solution exists yet on the market to meet public procurers' needs, and also that such a solution does not seem will be available on the short time. The PCP, the research and development faced in a PCP process has to be developed through 3 different phases, with a previous phase with some preparatory activities, and it's not included, very important, the commercialization of the solutions developed in the process. The project started with phase 0, open market consultation. The consortium carry out a large European need analysis and co-creation process with the main stakeholders of the project, with 2 main objectives: to define the common PCP challenges and needs, and to ensure the feasibility of the PCP requirements from a supplier point of view. With all the activities that we have developed, we have reached over 80 healthcare professional experts on chronic pain and more than 200 patients suffering from chronic pain. The information collected through the open market consultation was essential for all the rest of the project. We could to determine better the scope of the call, the budget, and the timings for the PCP phases. We have launched the request for tender using the Relief e-tender platform. It was an online tool for the preparation and submission of the tenders. We have received 17 offers and representing a total of 34 entities from 8 different European countries. 10 of the offers were joint consortium and 13 startup or a small and medium enterprise were involved in those offers. After the evaluation process, 7 tenders were awarded to participate in phase 1. The objective of phase 1 feasibility study is to identify innovative and cost-effective solutions to face the challenge of the project. We have organized 6 visits in the 3 hospitals member of the Bayer Group with the aim to offer contractors a deep understanding of the operational conditions governing the design of the solutions. For the follow-up of the work done by the contractors, of course, we organize different monitoring meetings to present the work done and the results obtained. And at the end of the phase, we will have 7 feasibility studies delivered and analyzed by the Bayer Group. All the contractors completed the phase successfully. So they were invited to participate in phase 2, prototype development. The objective of this phase is to develop a prototype that can be demonstrated in laboratory conditions based on the previous feasibility studies. We have awarded 4 suppliers for starting this phase. Again, we have organized different monitoring meetings for the follow-up of the work, and it was very relevant, the 2 prototype iteration that we have organized that allow the contractors to demonstrate at technical and functional level how the prototype solutions were achieving the relief challenges, and also before the end of the phase, a validation of the prototype, of each prototype in lab conditions were carried out. We have defined a strict evaluation protocol, and it allowed the Bayer Group to give recommendations for improving the final prototype to deliver. At the end of the phase, we had 4 prototypes delivered and evaluated by the Bayer Group, and all the contractors complete successful the phase. For this reason, they were invited to participate in the field test, to test in real conditions the solution. The information related to this phase will be presented by my colleagues. I will like also to highlight that the project decided to develop the field testing as a study with the objective to evaluate the clinical implications of using an ICT solution in clinical practice to support professionals and patients in the management of the chronic pain. So we have created a study protocol for the implementation of the field testing. And the most important is at the end of the phase, we have 2 final innovative solutions tested in real conditions and now ready for starting the commercialization. Those solutions will be presented by the contractors following my presentation, but before their presentation, I would like to invite you to ask questions related to my presentation. I know it was very quickly, sorry for that, but the time is very peptide, and also ask questions related to the presentation made by Orestes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anna. So from now, I will retake the role of moderator. Thank you very much for this presentation and a good overview of what we did during the 4 years of the RELIEF project. For the moment, we are 1 minute ahead of the initial planning, which is already a great achievement. Thank you very much for respecting the planning. Orestes, we have a question for you, which is any plan to introduce innovation partnerships under Horizon Europe? I don't know if you have answer to this question.
Well, I wouldn't be able to comment on that yet, and it's certainly not a done decision, and it's not fully on our hands. You know that there is, let's say, sometimes it seems like a complex multitude of programs we have, and some of them can be combined. So I wouldn't necessarily say that one should only look in at Horizon Europe in order to see what kind of different procurement opportunities there are. I can say for sure that if one looks at Horizon Europe and Digital Europe, EU4Health, but also the other programs, one shouldn't underestimate the opportunities in structural funds or other activities. Also, the European Innovation Council will most likely get what they want. And innovation partnership has been proven to be a useful tool that the Commission supports, and I think it will keep supporting it. But more than that, if we were doing this event a month or two later, I think I would be able to give you a more concrete answer. Sorry.
Okay, so more information to come on this specific part. Thank you very much, Orestes.
Yes.
We do not have more questions for the moment, so I think we need to move to the next section so we keep the timing. So now we are going to have a 35 minutes session, which is dedicated to the presentation and a concrete presentation and demonstration of the two solutions that have been developed during the RELIEF PCP project. So you will have a concrete idea, a concrete idea of what we can do in a RELIEF in a PCP project and what is the result of the RELIEF PCP. So first, I will leave the floor to Antonis from Gnomon, a Greek company, who will present and make a short demonstration of the Epionet solution. So Antonis, you have like 12-15 minutes. Then we will go to Tech4Care, and again, do not hesitate to ask questions in a dedicated section on the tool, and we will answer this question at the end of the session. So the floor is yours, Antonis, to present the Epionet solution.
Thank you very much, Luis. Thank you for the invitation. Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to present Epionet, which is the solution developed within RELIEF PCP project from Gnome Informatics. So what is Epionet shortly? It consists of a patient mobile app and an IoT device, an activity tracker for allowing the self-management of chronic pain by the patients themselves, and follows a patient-centered approach, and also includes a clinician dashboard, which allows the personalized patient monitoring remotely, and is based on contemporary pain medicine assessment and guidelines. So moving on, let's see the main features, the main innovative features of the patient mobile application, which includes the provision of a treatment plan, including goals for achieving during daily life, also a smart pain assessment tool, and also it allows the data management of the health of the patients by providing a consent mechanism, so that patients, they are really in charge of their data and they can share it with anyone who is in their care procedure. Also, it provides some training material through which are supported by experiential learning episodes, and also it gives the opportunity to patients to connect with their peers and receive support. And finally, also it has some smart features, including a virtual coach which supports the adherence of the patients to their treatment. So moving on to the clinician side, the main feature, which is the remote patient monitoring, is supported by a set of tools like the assessment of pain following the biopsychosocial model. Also the tool to create individualized treatment plans, the possibility for the patient, for the clinician to quickly triage patients based on several features like increased pain levels or non-adherence to the treatment plan. And also it provides a multitude of graphical representations of data that are being generated by the patients themselves and can be followed up by the clinicians, but also it offers the opportunity for doctors and patients to be connected through video consultations. So let's see how Epion works in action. So moving on to the first scenario, before the patient goes to their doctor to check their status, the patient has the opportunity to enter some information about their pain condition, but also they have the possibility to offer some data regarding their medical history and their social and work background. So what you see here is the procedure that patient follows in order to provide the consent to the doctor to access their data. Also here you can see the way that the patient describes their pain condition following several standardized questionnaires. But also having the opportunity to enter their medical history, like comorbidities or any medications that they have taken in the past for their pain condition, but also several other information, which in fact they can also, since the application provides the mechanism to connect to existing healthcare information systems, this information can also automatically be populated by the electronic health record of hospitals that the application is connected to. So this is the part of the medical history, and now we can see how the patient answers a questionnaire which is relevant to the social background and also what is the working status of the patient, which is information very crucial for the doctors. So moving on to the next scenario, we may see how the clinician, after they receive this first information by their doctor, they can prescribe a treatment plan, an individual treatment plan for the specific patient. So let's see how this is done in practice. So after the clinician enters their web dashboard, they can access a list of their patients and they can see their medical history, the pain evaluation of the patient using visual analog scales, but also having in mind what is the score of these pain levels, or what is the interference of pain with daily life. Also very quickly a summary of what is the social background of the patient and what is their current working status. And this is the main area where the clinician actually have to assign a treatment plan to the patient. So this is let's say the heart of the clinician dashboard, where clinicians actually can interact with their patients and assign to them activities that are related to their self-management, including, for instance, prescription of several types of medication, and also assigning frequencies, daily frequencies of medication intake, or assigning questionnaires, which are mainly validated scales regarding the evaluation of the pain and other aspects of the daily life. In addition, the clinician can also assign the patient to track and monitor significant aspects of daily life, like, for instance, activity. And they have also the possibility to assign goals for these variables of daily life, which is quite important. Also, the possibility of adding exercise recommendations, which the patient can perform at their home. So there's a multitude of options that the clinician can add as part of the treatment plan and suggest them to the patient. So moving on, let's see how the patient actually deals with their condition on daily life. There are several tools that are offered by the patient mobile application. Like for instance, there is the possibility of a dashboard for the patient to see what kind of activities they have been assigned, but also in a way that is being simplified for them, especially considering complex patient cases. This is very important so that the patient knows every day what kind of activities they have to do, and also give them the opportunity to note down which medications they have taken, answer specific questions about their pain condition so that the clinicians can follow up with their patients. But also they provide the possibility to access specific training material in the form of virtual patients, as we call them, which are interactive scenarios, and their main target is to allow patients to increase their decision-making skills by having to answer and choose specific, let's say, options on hypothetical patient scenarios. So moving on, let's see how the clinicians can follow up with their patient progress. So in this video, we can see the clinician entering their dashboard and checking specific filters to see which patients are of need of support, and they can access also several graphs regarding the adherence of the patient, like which kind of medication they are taking or not, and which goals they have been achieving or not. As we have described before, goals are related to specific variables like activity or sleep and so on. So this gives the opportunity to clinicians to monitor which of these goals are being achieved. In addition, there is the possibility for clinicians to see in a graphical way several parameters and combine them, like for instance, check how the pain interferes with daily life. Here we can see for an example, the pain evaluation, the scores of the scales that patients have self-reported, and how these are, what are their trends, taking into account also their lifestyle. So how the pain might interfere with their activity levels, for instance, or how their medication adherence. In addition, clinicians have the possibility to monitor whether patients have crossed specific thresholds that have been set up by the clinicians themselves in order to monitor the progress and receive alerts based on specific threshold violations. So moving on to the last, let's say, scenario of Epyon application, we can see how the patient can interact with other peers and communicate, also exchanging concerns and receiving support. There are two main tools that the patient has in his hands to discuss, to have a chat, let's say, channel with other peers where they can ask for help and receive support. But there is also the opportunity to connect to a community portal where they can receive, let's say, guidelines and instructions, and let's say strategies of how to cope with their condition. In this case, they receive support from other patients, let's say, for instance, expert patients that are members of patient associations who have the control of these social networks. I think that we have finished. I don't know if we can move to the next presentation.
Thank you very much, Antonis. That was more than clear and timing respected. So thank you very much for this. So you have just seen the first concrete example of the result of the work of the result we can achieve with a PCP project. So again, do not hesitate to ask questions in a dedicated session. We will answer all the questions after the presentation from Carlos and from Tech4Care. We will present you the second innovative solution that has been developed, which is the VER Relief. So the floor is yours, Carlos, and then we will go through the different questions. Same rules, 12 to 15 minutes.
Thanks, Luis. Yes, I will try to stick to the time. Thanks, Antonis, for presenting before me. The solution we have created was created by our group, was a response to the comprehensive challenge that Relief PCP gave us, and we received 9 challenges. Antonis have been showing some already of these. We consider the whole process of care. That's important to anticipate, and for us it was very important to do very much user engagement and role playing to try to understand the perspective of the clinician and also the patients, which are the actors that, as we will see in the next slide, are at the center of our solution, because VER Relief is a modular solution composed by an application for clinicians, an application for patients that are somehow triangulated by what we call the Dr. Relief. So the set of algorithms that we have created and set of relationships we have created to improve the collaboration of the patient with the solution. We have developed the solution in collaboration with my teams, Ulster University, and also I forgot to mention Francisco José Tarazona, our clinical expert in Spain, who contributed to the project. So the solution is a comprehensive solution that incorporates several features. I will not be showing all of them because of time limits, but it's important to stress that our idea was that digitalizing the process of care was not like just substituting paper with digital technologies, but we tried to create a new telemonitoring solution that could improve the services, offering new features and increasing the value. And I will start the demo of the solution by showing you actually in the slide that you see what is the final result of working in such a digitalized concept, which is giving to the patient, to the doctor, sorry, like you can see, a very broad set of information on how his clinic is going. So basically the doctors can have improved knowledge of their clinic, observe the number of patients that are currently cared, their current well-being, the level of pain among the patients, and this knowledge base is the basis for creating personalized plans. How? As you will see in this next slide, our idea is that the patients are receiving an application as a part of a new care contract. So the digital app is prescribed to each patient by the doctor. That is to need to explain to the patients the importance of using the solution, because the solution is a sort of wide, broad diary of pain that should support the patient in understanding himself or herself and keep a log of all the events. In the videos you are watching, the patient, for instance, is adding information about his pain. This can be done at the beginning and can be also updated each time that there is a new pain event or each time the doctor requests an assessment. So this is the first feature that I can show. In the next slide, instead, we can show that the solution we have developed is also a solution that can improve the adherence to medication, because the doctor can insert the therapeutic plan in the digital platform, and the patients, they receive an overview, like you see, of his medical profile, including the medicines that are prescribed, and through the application they can have a view of the day, including reminders about the need to take medicine, but also the possibility to receive to give back information on adverse events related to the medication. In the next slide, instead, our idea is to show you how medications and pain assessments are just a part of the information that the patient is giving to the doctor, and the doctor is using this information to basically tailoring a plan specifically on the needs of the patients. The plan includes, of course, the therapy of the day, but also the reminder to achieve specific goals related to activity, sleep, need for self-assessment that the app is displaying. All this information are fed to the clinician, to the patients by the clinician, and are also supported by the use of the digital avatar, who is reminding and giving back a set of information to the patients. In addition to the information provided by the digital avatar, the patients can, of course, access their own dashboard where they can review their statistics and analyze the trends in pain level, adherence to medication, and also their capacity of achieving the goals set by the doctor. One extra feature that we have added to the application, as you will see in the next slide, is the possibility for the doctor to customize and send, as part of the therapeutic contract, reminder and activity related to the need of filling in standardized and validated instruments for self-assessments of different dimensions. So basically, the doctor can include in the plan the need for the patients to fill in the questionnaires. This is important not only for standard care, but also in case there is need to collect data for research purposes. After receiving all this information, of course, the doctor has a full picture of each specific clinical case. Can see all the information regarding to the therapy adherence, can see the details and change the medication list of the patients, and of course can also see the results coming from the pain assessments. It is especially this that I would like to show you in the next slide. All the information related to the pain events are fed back to the doctor, and the doctor can have a view, a very detailed view of each pain event, and this can allow the clinicians to really follow the evolution of pain and the location of pain. Of course, the clinician can use also the platform during the visits and be himself or herself the one inserting the data on pain. This really gives a very full picture of the clinical case that the doctor can use for improving his knowledge base. Not only pain, also we think it's very important the possibility for the doctor to analyze the adherence in specific details, because every time that the patient adds information about the use of medication, this information is fed back to the doctor that can understand what is the trend in adherence, but also can use, thanks to the statistics and trends section, can use the information to triangulate those related to pain, to quality of sleep, level of physical activity, and also the general adherence to the plan. And this is also considered to be hopefully useful for the clinicians. The last feature that I want to show again on the clinical platform is that of having the possibility to chat with patients. This was something that at the time we started the project was considered a bit strange, as doctor and clinicians didn't think very useful the possibility to chat, but after the COVID crisis, actually this is very much appreciated, and actually everybody now is asking us integration with also video chat as a way to substitute the in-visit presence. The last details of the application that I would like to show you are the possibility of accessing also the community of experts for patients. So we don't think that the application should allow the person to chat with his doctor, but also to create a meaningful relationship with other patients sharing the same experience of pain. And this is also done through the application. to conclude, actually, you might ask yourself why, sorry, I forgot the training materials that are part of the community, and this is what now you're showing. But given the time limit, I would like to conclude answering the curiosity you have about the name VR Relief. Our solution is called VR Relief because for the experiment we choose, for the project, we choose to use hardware that allowed also the use of VR headset. And we integrated into the application not only a wearable sensor to retrieve data, but also a VR application for providing relief from pain through meditation and distraction. In the next slide, I have a very short video which will allow me to be on time because it lasts less than a minute. It's just to show you that in our prototype, we managed to integrate also a meditation feature which was developed by our partner Ulster University, and in the meditation environment a patient could be also invited by the doctor, and in this environment it was possible to perform meditation activities which according to the literature should also allows a non-therapeutic treatment of pain. We've been developing this application paying a lot of attention to elements like the soundtrack, like the visual, and we believe it's a good starting point to develop also future application in this area. And this is the last part of the presentation that allows me to be on 11 minutes. Luis.
That's more than perfect, Carlos. Thank you very much. So yes, you have seen a concrete presentation and demonstration of the two solutions that have arrived at the end of the PCP Relief PCP process. As said by Anna at the beginning, we had 7 consortium companies selected to start the PCP process with the phase 1, and we have ended with only 2 companies. You can see that the 2 solutions are addressing the same needs. So the different 9 relief challenge we have defined in our relief tender documents, but they are addressing these needs in a different ways. And this is why, in a sense, the PCP process is interesting. You give the possibility to companies to develop and propose solutions with innovative features to address the same need, but in different ways. So at the end, you can assess these different proposals and select the one which fits the best with your initial needs and challenges. So that's perfect. We still have 10 minutes to go through the questions. And I will start with the first one, which is from Pira, and you are asking which kind of professional were involved in the PCP, in this PCP process. So I will answer this question. As presented by Anna, we have 3 pilot hospitals. We have 3 organizations who are members of the Bayer Group, so 3 university hospitals. And these 3 university hospitals provided healthcare professionals specialized in chronic pain. But basically, I mean, we started in phase 0 by definition of the needs, and to define the needs, we have decided to involve healthcare professionals and to ask questions to assess the needs, not only from the healthcare professionals from the 3 pilot hospitals, but also from healthcare professionals and patients from other pain units in Europe. So we have interviewed more than 80 healthcare professionals, pain specialists, and more than 200 patients. Based on the answers we have collected, we have defined our 9 relief challenges that have been included in the relief tender documents, and the interesting companies had to submit proposals to address these 9 challenges. So the healthcare professionals, I mean, the profiles that have been involved at the very beginning of the relief project in phase 0 was very large. And then during the PCP process, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, to evaluate the work of the different contractors, to evaluate the prototypes, and to conduct the clinical study in phase 3 that we will present to you right after. We had pain specialists, nurses, a pain unit secretary, IT director from the 3 university hospitals, who have been involved in the PCP process, who have been involved in the evaluations of the solutions developed by the contractors, and who have been involved in providing feedback, concrete orientations to the contractors. So for this question, okay, I hope it answers your question. Antonis, we have a question from Carolina about your solution. I think when you mentioned the link and the social network, let's say, offered by your solution, and it is the interaction between patient via the application control in order to avoid some kind of conflict or giving bad advice.
Okay, thank you for this question. So actually, I think that you are referring to the community portal. We have a collaboration with patient associations, which are and also their members who are assigned the role of the moderator in this community portal, so they can control what is being posted in this community portal, and they can resolve any kind of conflicts that are part of the discussions taking place in the community portal. So their role is very essential to us and very helpful, I would say, both for controlling but also to provide support to the patients.
Likewise, in our solution, the feature, sorry, the feature is organized according to roles. So basically, the access to the community is managed by the clinic in principle, that defines roles so that nobody without expertise, for instance, can give information related to the therapies, which would be very, very dangerous. And then the association or clinicians can access and interact.
Okay, thank you. Perfect. A question from Jose Sanchez. Which procure have real plan to buy the solution, and how will they articulate the purchase? So, very good question. I mean, we will cover this topic later during the conference when we will talk about the commercialization phase of the two solutions, because right after we will present you the phase 3 where we have conducted a clinical study, and then the two contractors will come back to present you what is their commercialization plan. Because as you know, in the PCP process, you don't have the procurement which is included in the process. So basically you have to finish, normally you have to finish a PCP process ideally with at least 2 solutions. So after the end of the PCP process, you can start your procurement, the procurement step by launching your public tender in order to award the contract to 1 or 2 or even more solutions, because maybe other solutions have been developed in parallel to your of your PCP. But basically, what we have defined with an agreement we found with the contractors is that the 3 pilot hospitals will normally have the possibility to use one of the 2 solutions for free or with a good discount for the first year. So basically, the idea is to continue the collaboration between the pilot hospital, so the end users, and the 2 companies, so they can continue to improve the solution in a more co-creation way. So for the moment, the decision on which of the buyer is going to buy the solution at the end is not defined, is not answered yet, but normally the 3 pilot hospital will continue to use at least one of the 2 solutions for at least 1 year after the project. And what's the feedback given by patients who participate to the trial? So same thing, we will cover this later, where we will show and explain the results we have obtained with the clinical studies. Orestis, just to let you know, thank you, Mr. Birov, for your 2 questions, which are quite long. We are going to talk more broadly about the PCP process, the lessons learned, the good practices, or the recommendations we can share with you all in the last session of today. So Orestis, I just invite you to go in the question section just to read the question from Mr. Birov, and I think the best moment to answer these questions will be during the last sessions.
I will. Thank you, Louis.
Superb. So let me read the question at the same time, because Mr. Birov, you have asked another one. Yes, so same thing, yes, about the recommendations, lessons learned, and good practices. We will cover all of this in the last sessions. So we keep your question in suspense, Mr. Birov, and we do not worry. We are going to cover all of these aspects in the last sessions of the conference. If we do not have more questions, let's continue with the next session, which will be presented by the buyer group of the RELIEF consortium. So I invite my two colleagues, José Carlos and Rolf, to show their faces and to activate the camera. So these sessions will last 30 minutes. Hi, José Carlos. And we are going to cover the phase 3 of the RELIEF PCP project, presenting you the overview, result, and the main conclusions we can make on after the conduction of the clinical study. And Rolf. So I will start with the first the presentation of the, let's say, the structuration of the RELIEF phase 3 PCP. So, I mean, normally in the normal PCP process, the phase 3 is dedicated to the field testing, but you don't have, let's say, clear and concrete instruction from European Commission on how to implement this phase 3. So you can articulate it in the way you prefer and in the way which is the most suitable for your topic. So what we have decided to do with the RELIEF PCP project was to divide the phase 3 into 3 main steps, with the most important step, which was a clinical study. So we have decided to conduct a clinical study with a concrete clinical protocol, with submission of the clinical protocol to ethical committees, etc. And so before starting this clinical study, we had to cover a preliminary step. First one was the local adaptation. So basically the objective was to do the local adaptation of each of the 2 prototypes to the corresponding pilot sites, as well as training of the staff how to use both solutions. So the idea was to configure and adapt the 2 solutions to the specificity of the 3 pilot sites, but with not a complete customization of the solution, because as it was a multi-center clinical study, the 2 solutions needed to have the exact same functionalities for the 3 pilot sites. So no major differences between the solutions. The most important work we did was on the solution translation, because to be used in the 3 pilot sites, one in Sweden, one in France, and one in Spain, it was highly necessary to have the solutions in the local language, so the healthcare professionals and the patient could use it properly. So that was one of the, let's say, hard work to do at the beginning of phase 3, in addition to the local training of the medical staff to make sure that they know how to use the solution before starting the clinical study. So I have to say that the initial plan was to have 2 months for this first step, but at the end it took us 3 months to cover it, and it was even not finished at the end of step 1, because translation of this kind of digital solution with technical words, technical vocabulary, and many contents takes time, and it needs a very deep collaboration between the buyer group, the medical staff, plus the contractors. After this step, it was the step of the local pilot test. So the objective of this step was to ensure that everything was ready to be able to launch the field testing, the clinical study with patients in real life condition. But because we took some delay with the step 1, we had also a big delay with the step 2, which initially the plan was to have it for 1 month, but at the end it took us 3 months to cover it because we still had some important work to do on the translation. So I just want to highlight here and always share a good, let's say, lessons learned in a PCP supported and funded by the European Commission. Most of the time you will need to have 2 or 3 buyers from 2 or 3 different European countries. So this language, this translation aspect is one of the, maybe not the most complex issue, but the most important issue to cover during the whole project from the beginning and to the end. So just take this in consideration if you want to be involved in a European PCP, because this is highly necessary to dedicate some time for this specific task. And then the clinical study, step 3, where we have defined clinical study protocol, ethical committee application. We did patient recruitment, monitoring of the clinical study, evaluation of the data that will be presented later, and we will publish scientific paper. So on the next slide, just to remind you, the 3 pilot sites. So we have the 3 pilots came from France with the University Hospital of Lariboisière, Reina Sofia University Hospital in Cordoba in Spain, and the University Hospital of Uppsala in Sweden. So clinical study protocol. So you understand what we wanted to check and to verify with these clinical studies. The primary aim of the study was to evaluate if an ICT solutions increase the patient empowerment and self-management in managing their pain conditions. And the secondary aims were to evaluate if an ICT solutions increase adherence to the treatment and how the patients and healthcare professionals experience the use of an ICT solution in the management of their chronic pain. So study design of the project, it was a randomized, controlled, and multi-center study. The evaluation period was 12 weeks, so each patient included in the clinical study was involved in the clinical study for 12 weeks, so 3 months. We have included patients with chronic pain scheduled for their first visit at the pain unit, and in total the plan was to recruit 120 patients at each site, 20 patients randomized to one of the 2 ICT solutions, and 20 patients randomized as a control group. The clinical study protocol, 3 different endpoints. The first one, primary endpoint, it was to evaluate the potential of the ICT solution to increase the patient empowerment, self-management, engagement, and motivation for the treatment of chronic pain. We use the SMRC questionnaire to try to answer these questions. Secondary endpoint, to characterize the potential for an ICT solution to improve the management of chronic pain. Several questionnaires used to answer this question. The Curate developed especially by the Relief and by Rolf. Then the PAGIC questionnaire, validated questionnaire, the SUSE, and also the time for taking the medical history during the first visit. And finally, the exploratory endpoints questionnaire addressing the 9 challenges, comparing the 2 ICT solutions, using the answer from the SMRC, Curate, and SUSE. And then, important, we wanted to also collect, let's say, deep and valuable data and information from the patients. So we have conducted semi-structured interview with 6 patients at each site, 3 patients per solutions at each site. So the idea was to ask them a long list of questions in order to really get their feedback about the use of the solution, about their proposal for improvement, etc. Clinical study protocol, again, inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria. I'm doing the timekeeper since the beginning, and I see that I'm speaking way too much, so I will skip this. It's just different criteria to include the patients. And then before I give the floor to Jose Carlos, the last slide is just to show you the clinical study process. So basically, we had to recruit patients who have their first clinical visit scheduled at the pain unit. When a patient accepted to participate in the study, we organized the first study visit, prior the first clinical visit, where the patient were randomized in the control group or in the use of one of the two ICT solutions. Then they had to answer the first questionnaire. They get back to home. They use the solutions. They were randomized in one of the solutions. Then they come back to the clinical, to the pain unit to do their first clinical visits. And 12 weeks later, they had to come back to the hospital to do their last study visit, to answer the last questionnaires. And of course, they had the option to continue using the solution at the end of the study. So now I leave the floor to Jose Carlos to continue with giving you an overview of this clinical study.
Okay, thank you, Louis. This was the original idea of the clinical study, and I'm going to show next slide, please. What happens in reality with the clinical study in the 3 sites. First, we want to highlight the collaboration between the contractors and the pilot hospitals. We started with training sessions for the medical teams during the step 1 for the local adaptation, but we had to have more sessions later because you know, the delays in the field testing, etc., new doctors joining the team, etc. I want to thank again the contractors for their commitment to the project, because during the 16 months of the field testing, it was supposed to be 6 months only, but it took 16. They were in continuous communication with us, with all the hospitals, and this allowed a smooth running of the trial. We had some technical incidences, but all in all, I think very low, around 12, 13 for the Epion and the VR Relief, and they were solved quite quickly by the contractors, either by email or organizing online meetings with the medical teams or directly with the patients. Next slide, please. So difficulties, and we found, well, to start, they're not related with COVID-19. The normal problems we find in a clinical study. We had delays obtaining ethics approval. We changed the protocol, of course, and so we require new approvals. And then also because the type of study, some of the patients were not able to join the study because they had no availability to attend extra visits to the hospital. And then, of course, we had changes in the clinical teams due to the delays, and we require extra training sessions. Then we had the COVID-19, and lockdown stopped everything for a few weeks. And then the doctors, also because of the study, the doctors involved in Relief had to treat COVID-19 patients, so they were not available for a time. And later they had to solve problems with other patients that were not COVID-19, solving waiting lists at their hospitals. So it was all a bit difficult last year. And also, when we were able to start recruitment again, we found out that patients were not happy about coming to the hospital because they perceived probably a higher risk of infection. Next slide, please. So some of the lessons learned from the 3 sites, we need for this type of IT applications to dedicate a lot of time to patients individually. We cannot do group inclusion because it doesn't work. They don't understand correctly what they have to do, and just only a problem later. We found out that also that it was useful to follow up on the patients to check if they had problems, because we couldn't see them in the hospital, but just to check by phone, and also encourage them to use the device more, I think. The IT application need to be well developed. because if not, everyone loses their interest in them, the patient and also the clinicians. When you find a problem, it has to be solved quickly. I think the contractors managed to do that, but it's very important. And it's also very important the involvement and dedication of the healthcare professional, so they get good adherence from the patient. And all in all, the patient engagement was quite high, given the difficult circumstances. Next, please. And I finish here. These are the total numbers. We aimed for 120 patients. We recruited 102. Of them, 7 dropped. So that's 95 patients, 80% of the target, which is not bad, taking into account the pandemic and the many problems we faced. And I leave here for Rolf, who's going to explain more in detail the results of the study.
Yeah, thank you. So here you see the key figures concerning demographics, and I show this just to show you that the patients we included represent a normal patient population, and dominated by women, around 60%. The age around just below 50, mean age. And you also see the pain duration, that the majority of these patients have had the pain condition for at least 3 years. And the type of pain included are obviously highlight the inclusion criteria, and we included back pain, and that these patients dominate, which is also the case in many pain clinics, neck pain, widespread pain, and some peripheral neuropathic pain patients. Then you have some patients with more than one concomitant pain condition, and almost all of these, except I think it was one, have back pain and another pain as well. So one could say that for sure that this represents a common pain population at a pain center. Next slide. So looking at the data, then the primary variable, which was the SMRC for self-management, we couldn't see any significant difference between the groups or between before and after treatment. So from that point of view, the study was negative, as you can see in the next slide. Now, it's really important to understand that a negative study doesn't say that these solutions don't work. It's not an evidence for no effect. It's just that we fail to see any effect in using this primary variable. But we can also see that the mean values on this scale and the standard deviations are in line with previous published data in patients with chronic conditions. Next slide. Looking at the secondary variables, the adherence to treatment, no significant effect. It was a bit interesting to see that in the control group there was a significantly higher score at start, indicating that they didn't follow their prescriptions. But at the end of the study, there was no difference. Patient global impression of change, no difference between controls and solutions. Overall, you could see that there was a slight increase in PGIC, which means that the patients had some, at least experienced some degree of improvement during the study. When it comes to SUS, which is the score for technical use of the system, there was no significant difference between the two solutions. But it was rather interesting to see from the patient's perspective that the score was comparable with frequently used technical solutions and within the high marginal acceptability range, and we'll see some data soon. When regarding the physicians, the score was was a little bit lower, but very few observations, so I wouldn't draw any conclusions on that. There were just 5 physicians involved. The next slide shows the system usability scale, and mean value was 66, but the median value 71, saying that 50% of the patients had at least 71 as a score. And as you see to the right from a publication, a recent publication in Mayo Clinical Procedures, you can see that an SUS score of 71 is comparable to using the GPS systems, for instance. So it's a quite interesting finding. We could see that there was a normal distribution around these figures, and no statistical significance between the 2 solutions using the independent t-test. Next slide has to do with the explorative data, which is really interesting because we had a questionnaire for the patients, comments from the patients, and the interviews. Using the questionnaires with scores from 0, where an item had no interest for the patient, to 4, where it was highly scored, we could see that the eHealth solution included a possibility for monitoring activities like monitoring walking, training, and sleeping patterns was very high scored, like 3.4. And also that it included self-management, maintenance techniques, and training recommendations like videos, 3.2. The eHealth solution included a built-in reminder for the patient to report data, take medication, doing physical exercise, making and keeping track of appointments, etc., 2.8. This is to show the final data where you have the monitoring of activities. You can see that many patients score very high, and the mean value 3.4. Next slide. And again, possibility to the usefulness of assisting in making decisions on your own care. And this is really interesting because the patients scored this high, 2.7, although the primary endpoint failed. So this is an indication that the solutions had helped the patients in decision-making around their own care. Next slide is, okay. The most, what needs improvement or could be added? And this is, sorry, I'm reading the wrong slide here. Most positive experience was the possibility to record activity, sleep, and pulse. 36 comments on that. The reminders, mainly to take medications or do activities, 9 comments, and follow the pain and change over time. And this, in some patients, this was, they told us in the interviews that this was really important for them to really understand the connection between activities and pain. And last, a very interesting comment that one of the patients was happy that researchers and scientists are working with this and not just medicines to help relieve the pain. Next slide. What needs improvement? Well, one thing which I think personally has a lot to do with the pandemic, they really wanted more active physicians using the data that the patients put into the system. 10 comments on that. they want more feedback on their own data. They also want more personalized video tutorials, and mainly regarding exercises. And then there were some technical issues and mainly connectivity. In this project, we used extra phones, and we asked the specific question if that had any impact on their participation and how they conducted the study. But they said that 25 of the patients had absolutely no problems with an extra phone, but 14 patients would have preferred their own phone, and many of these would have used the system much more if that had been the case. Next slide. We have to take this data and view it not in a way that not drawing too many conclusions, because only 5 physicians were involved, but all these 5 physicians used both systems. And what was most valued by the physicians was to get information from the patient before the first visit, like the social status and past medical history. 2.7. Next slide. And here's the current pain medication, and that was filled in by the patient ahead of the first visit, 2.7. Next slide. Helpful of past and current non-pharmacological treatment was filled in, 2.9. And the diagnostic questionnaires that they were filled in, 2.9. That the effects and possible side effects of pharmacological treatments, 2.8. And you can take that one back. Just a comment on the non-applicable part is when the physician didn't use that part, so it's not scored. So the main conclusions from this study is that there was no significant effect on self-efficacy for managing chronic disease 6-item scale, the primary endpoint, or any of the secondary endpoints. The patient score in the SUS mean 66 and median 71 for the 2 solutions was within the high marginal and acceptability of the acceptability range. The patients valued the health solution, including the monitoring of activities, self-management maintenance techniques and training recommendations, reminders to report data, take medication, doing physical exercising, making and keeping track of appointments. And the patient's perception was high about the usefulness of the e-health solution to assist in making decisions on their own care. Patient would have valued more feedback from treating physician, and the physician scored getting information about the medical history before the first visit, as well as reports on effects and side effects of the treatment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rolf. So yes, we cannot enter too much in detail in the data, the statistic we can make based on the information collected from the patients and the healthcare professional in this clinical study, because we are going to publish a scientific paper using all of this data, and therefore it is not allowed for us to share in detail all of this data and information before the publication of this scientific paper. But I hope this information gave you a good idea of what we could achieve in a PCP project, and especially in phase 3 when you are conducting a clinical study. So quite good result obtained, good feedback from patients and healthcare professionals. So we are quite happy with the result, especially because the solutions that were used were still prototypes, and they were not a final and already commercialized solution. So that has added a little bit more complexity in the clinical trial, but we'll cover this in the last session. Before we move to the next session, I have one question, I think, for you, Rolf, which is, was the study powered to have a statistical significant difference? If you cannot understand the question I'm reading, I will do it again. So was the study powered to have a statistical significant difference?
Sorry, can you repeat that once again, slowly?
Was the study powered to have a statistical significant difference?
Okay.
My French accent, I'm sorry.
Not really. We couldn't do a proper power evaluation or power calculation because we had no previous data on this specific population. So in that sense, it was an explorative study and a pilot study, more or less. What we now have, we have the data on this population, and this would be of very high value for doing power calculations in future studies. But we didn't have that data before this study. So we were not able to do a proper power calculation. And also, you have to keep in mind that we had time limitations here. In a normal study, you can include a lot of patients, and there's not this time limitation which is in a project like this. So we had to take that into consideration as well.
Okay, good. So we don't have any more questions so far, except the one from Mr. Birov that will be answered in the last session. Again, do not worry, we will, the last session of today's meeting, which will happen in 30 minutes, we will cover all the lessons learned, good practices and recommendations we can share with you on phase 0, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 of a PCP process from a procurer perspective, but also from contractor's perspective. So valuable information to come at the end of in the last session of the conference. But before this, I will give again the floor to our colleagues, the contractors, where they will have the opportunity in 10 minutes to explain you what is their commercialization plan after the end of the relief projects that will be ended at the end of this month. So Fotis, the floor is yours to present the commercialization plan for the ePioneer solution you have developed within the relief PCP process.
Thank you, Luis, and hello everyone. So over the next slides, I will show you what are our commercialization plans and activities for ePioneer solution. So I would like to start with our potential customers. So we have identified a list of customers that we want to target for the ePioneer solution. And we have already started with contacting and trying to approach some of them. So the first and the most obvious customer is the healthcare provider or providers. So any hospitals or private clinics or care units that they include also pain units, and they are interested in deploying such a solution for their patients. Such as the 3 also procurers participating in the relief project. And we have also already started contacting hospitals and private clinics here in Greece, and trying to get their interest and their needs towards using such a solution. The second customer or group of customers that it's in our under our radar, and it's high enough in our priority list, are the patient associations or pain management associations. So also my colleague Adonis before mentioned that also during and throughout the pilot, we already engaged with patient associations, and particularly in Spain, that I will also mention later on, that we collaborated with LIRE, the Patient Association from Spain. And we are also in close collaboration with the equivalent patient association here in Greece towards further piloting the solution and moving on into the commercialization phase. The government in general, and most particularly represented by Ministry of Health or social insurances or public health insurance organizations. They are also in our list as customers, and we want to exploit any interest in deploying and rolling out such a pain management solution in a more in the wider population. Also interesting enough, as I will also mention further on, is to explore a common scheme, which is also commonly referred by pay-per-performance scheme that we want to explore, and also the possibility of having the EPION solution being prescribed by doctors in public hospitals and doctors that are working there. I think this is already started, and it's a reality in some of the European countries that e-health solutions can be prescribed similar to what other medications or other medical exams are prescribed. So that will also be very interesting and open up a lot of space for solutions in our domain, e-health solutions. Insurance companies are definitely, again, interesting clients to explore, and they may be also of their interest to provide such solution to their clients. And last but not least, patients themselves can explore, use the solution individually in order to better manage their conditions. Moving on and getting into the business models, we have identified three specific models. The first two are more obvious. The third one is more, it will be in the exploratory phase. So the first one is a subscription-based. Patients themselves can download the solution and use them with a fixed fee, which can either be per month or yearly. Same can be also for the hospitals and healthcare professionals that they want to use the solution. We can provide, and we will provide, a lump sum option, meaning that a package price for larger group of users or a group of hospitals that they would like to use the solution. And of course, a discounted price can be offered there. And the third option that I mentioned briefly before is the pay-per-performance. So it can be in collaboration with hospitals or larger health organizations, and there the profit can be as a portion of the reduced costs that such a solution can bring to the organization or the healthcare professionals. Moving on to the next slide, we have identified two solutions, two editions of the EPION solution, the basic and the more advanced one with equivalent pricing scheme. The basic one involves functionalities that the patients can use themselves without the participation of a healthcare professional, including connecting with the IoT devices, having this virtual patient feature that also Antonis demonstrated before. This community portal and all the social networking with other patients and patient associations. Whereas the advanced version will also include features that involves the collaboration with the healthcare professional, such as video consultation, appointment booking, and also the platform for the healthcare professionals where they can monitor the progress of the patients, and yes, perform video consultations and follow up with their treatment plans. In terms of commercialization activities, and before we reach the end product which will be ready to go to market, we have identified a list of activities that we are already performing. And this is split into 4 sections as shown here. One involves enhancements in the AP-only solution that we have in mind and they are under progress. This one involves improvements that we want to bring in the solution based on the feedback that we have received during the phase 3 from the procurers and the patients. As well as we have in mind to introduce more novel technologies in our solution, such as machine learning technologies and algorithms, and natural NLP, natural language processing. The first one will allow the solution to have a more predictive role as well, so it can identify some critical conditions and suggest solutions both for the patient and the healthcare professional. Of course, machine learning algorithms and technology is heavily based on previous data, so this will be improving gradually as we collect more data. And the second one, the natural language processing, again, it will allow us to further improve the chatbot, which can again engage in a more complicated scenario with the patients and alleviate some of the effort from the healthcare professional. Regarding the validation, the further validation of the PM solution, we are in contact with our partners, the Lab of the Medical Physics in Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, as well as the Patient Association in Greece, Eleana, for further running a pilot here in Greece, also in collaboration with a Greek hospital. Regarding the legal aspects, we are drafting a commercialization agreement that will cover the collaboration with our business partners, and topics that will be covered there are roles and responsibilities, the pricing and revenue sharing, liabilities, and definitely the IPR rights and the licensing. And last but not least, very important for us is the MDR certification process that we are undergoing, and that will give us it will certify AP-only as a medical device. This is a very important certification for our organization, as it is requested, as we have observed and based on our experience, when such e-health solutions are bringing into market. So it's a lengthy and costly solution. We are in progress and we are expected to finalize that by May this year. And the next slide, please. So business partners that we are already in contact, as mentioned, are the Patient Association, which is primarily going to be our business partners and potentially our first customers. In Spain, we have IREM, the Spanish Rheumatological League. In Greece, we have Eleana, the equivalent Greek association. We have also partnered with, in Sweden, with the Fibromyalgia Association, and we are also in contact with other relevant associations in other countries, also in France. And the last slide is some possible delivery channels and what we have identified as early adopters. Definitely, we are looking into teaming up with local distributors in the 3 countries of the Relief Project plus Greece, which can come in contact and being our local representative there when visiting hospitals or other possible potential customers. The pain units of the hospitals, particularly the ones that participated in the phase 3, we'll hope that they will be our early adopters. So we are in discussion of continuing the phase 3, the piloting with these 3 hospitals. Other partners in other relevant EU projects that we are participating definitely can be a good disseminating channel for promoting further the Beyond solution and establishing both collaborations and potentially finding customers. And yes, as it has already been mentioned a couple of times, patient associations is a main both business partner for us and potential customer and early adopter. And that concludes my presentation about our commercialization activities and plans. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fotis, for presenting this this information and what you are doing after the RELIEF project. So very interesting, especially the medical device certification that shows that you are in a good way and close to the commercialization phase. Thank you very much. Same thing, same exercise, Carlos. The floor is yours for 10 minutes. Please present us what you are going to do to commercialize the VR RELIEF solution.
Thanks, Luis. Yes, I would like to start the discussion about the commercialization by reflecting that now, basically, as typically you end up after a development project, we've been able to run across the whole TRL scale almost, and we are in the most difficult part, which is the valley of death. So when after the pilot, you need to push to get to the market. It is important that you mentioned already, Jose Carlos, that the project was supposed to have a trial during 6 months, and the COVID was somehow a disrupting event. We ended up in a 16-month trial, which means that we didn't touch the solution tested in the trial, not to affect the integrity of the trial. But of course, we've been focusing very much and thinking very much about the need to keep the solution updated with the recent trends, and the technology have changed a lot. And in this, we've been very lucky that our solution was born to be modular since the very beginning. So basically, as you have seen in the demo, we have a platform for clinicians, we have an app for patients, and we have also VR applications for people in chronic pain. That was for us a very important factor, as we could break down the complexity of the app and try multiple routes to the market, because the market is really crowded, as you have seen recently, especially with COVID, a lot of companies providing digital solutions. And we have started also, I'm happy to learn that also Fotis and colleagues, they found the same problem, but it is a problem which is an opportunity. We have started the medication device certification of our company. Actually, we are certifying the company so that each subcomponent can be, in turn, be qualified as a medical device. And we started from also the difficulties found in the trial. Those we have perfection. So difficulties in the synchronization of the device, because the hardware will consider the possibility to monitor during the project was considered very high, but at the same time was the reason for the higher number of requests of assistance. The limited attractiveness in the long term of the virtual reality experience was reported to us. The UI of the app was perceived as not appealing, and I'm not surprised now to learn that the mean SUS, the system usability scale, is below 70, which is, of course, probably part of the digital divide effect, but it's also a matter of reflection for us. We were aware of that. And we, of course, needed to hear this without intermediation, the voice of the patients and the end users. And we needed to think about the scalability of solution, because now, especially then in the next slide, I start showing you the commercialization plan we have for each component. So I start with the clinical platform. We found that the clinical platform market is very crowded, very busy, and especially the big hospitals, like the hospitals we found in RELIEF, are hospitals, of course, they have their own solution. So for us, the main activity during the 16 months of the trial, in parallel, we've been reworking completely on the platform to break it down into micro modules. So for us, that was the main activity, so that basically we can customize the solution to all different type of needs. No surprise that we have used the solution of what was created during RELIEF for care homes. Not surprised we have used it for primary care doctors in Italy, as we are provider now of the digital tool for medicina generale, primary care doctors in Italy. And that part of activity we have been working considerably, because the market is crowded. So there is maybe more place for a vertical tiny solution, which is doing less features, but probably those who are not covered by the big player. At the same time, regarding the VR component, which is the other interesting part of our solution, as we will see in the next slide, basically the VR component had some limitation. The limitation were that, as I said, the people were very happy to try. They tried initially, but they were very easily getting bored by the solution, and the distraction effect we were hoping for was not enough. So for that, we had the opportunity to rework completely this area. That at the beginning we started to work with Ulster University to develop our own VR department, also thanks to the participation of another PCP. And in this area, basically, we've been able to pull together all different type of activities and for multi-disease patients. So basically for different conditions, not only chronic pain, but also other conditions. And we have started a B2B agreement with Pico VR, which is a manufacturer of different hardware that allows to have a portable solution with a higher power, but needs an own solution. The commercialization of Relab actually is, which is the name we gave to this area, it's already started, but we launch a new product in October together with Pico. But I would like to pay now a bit more of attention to the third pillar of our solution, which is the application for patients. So very happy to hear what the patients think about this after the trial. We did well to restart in parallel to completely rework on the app. The rework was done for two reasons. First, because we needed to also allow the use of the app to be standalone. So we needed to open up the app also for those patients that do not have a clinicians now using the app. And that it is important to have a very broad audience, a broad market, because our idea is that the app that we are now completing the redevelopment, thanks also to the collaboration with a company more skilled in UI and mobile development here in our region, called Dausi, and together with the collaboration of this other company who has this UX experience, we have reworked the app so that we hope to increase the acceptability. So for instance, as you will see in the next slide, the whole UI, so all the parts, even the pain locator, have been reworked, and the idea now is, of course, to collect information, but instead of having the first objective of giving this information to the doctor, now we want to empower patient first, but also allow a feature for data extraction so that the patient can go to the doctor, showing the app, showing what I've done, and then maybe triggering in the doctor the interest for using the solution. So especially the dashboard, and as you will see in the next slide, the dashboard for people to understand their own pain has been radically changed. So we don't have those not so fancy graphics like we managed to create in the very quick phase 2, but we have thought together with UI expert on a way to allow the people to understand better the interaction of all the different dimensions. So sleep, level of activity, adherence, and we have created views for the patient to self-analyze him or herself. Now, going back to the concrete commercialization plan, we have, thanks to the possibility to break down the solution, we have basically more than one route to the market. Of course, we start from proposing the solution to the buyers for use of the complete package. So for that, our idea is that the product is a product requiring for a license, and the license can be fixed for each year of use, or can be also partly modular when the buyers require also to use hardware. Because on the hardware, of course, now thanks to the cheaper possibility in the market, we can offer also on loan, on lease terms, the hardware to the buyers, and that will add up to the license cost. We are basically ready. We just need to fine tune. We just need, of course, the first adopter of the whole solution. While, as I said, the modularity of the platform can also allow us to work with other customers. With regard to the app, I already clarified our idea is that the app will be given for free, and that in the app there will be the possibility to donate anonymous data for research. Because on that, as you might understand, we can improve really predictive models and more advanced algorithms, because we will have free, basically, anonymous data among preferably a lot of people. And the last idea that we are pursuing, on which we are in an advanced stage, is Model C2. We think that the app can be given for free, but not with advertisement. But as I can show in the last slide, our idea was that of contacting big pharma industry, especially we have discussion in the next slide that will be clear, please, Anna, if you manage to check exactly the last slide of the presentation. Basically, the idea is that since for many pharma companies, especially those with tradition of products that are not developing very much the compound, for instance, there are some painkillers that are basically the same since many years. The idea is to increase the value of those products by attaching accessories, extra services. So one service that we are proposing, and that's why we are in this discussion with one especially company here in Italy, is that the app can be given as a service to the user of the medication, and for instance can be scanned the QR code so to have the possibility to download the app, and in return the pharmacy will not have just the possibility to have a better image thanks to this service, but also in return in terms of adverse events notification, customer of service satisfaction. And that's the discussion we are having now, especially in our region with the one big player. That was the end of my presentation. Thanks, Luis. Sorry, a bit late.
No problem. Thank you very much, Carlos. Thank you for all of this information and also for this. So we can see that the PCP process is a big part of the R&D of the development of the solution, but normally the commercialization phase do not start right after the end of a PCP process, because based on the information collected during the phase 3, normally the contractors still need some time to improve the solution using all of this feedback before being able to propose a finalized solution that is commercializable. So some time is still necessary for the two contractors, the two companies to finalize their solution, but normally this solution will be available by the end of the year, or at least at the beginning of Q4 of this year. So this is very great, and we are looking for this, of course, to use this solution in our healthcare organization. No specific question on this session. No, let's move to the very last part of the conference, 30-minute roundtable with Orestis, our project officer, as a moderator of the session, and I invite my colleague from the buyer groups plus my colleague contractors to join the roundtable. Just to open your mic, open your videos, and Orestis, I leave you the floor to manage this session. The idea now is to share with the audience, let's say, the most important lessons learned, good practices, and recommendation if you want to be involved in a PCP project.
Thank you, Louis, and well, thanks to all the participants first of all for maybe if you could mute your microphones, as I'm having some echo. Yes, I will be muting mine as well when I'm not speaking. So Thank you very much for the presentations, and I think it was a very carefully planned event with a lot of useful information stage by stage of the PCP process, and the last part on the commercialization, and before that the results was particularly interesting, I guess for the attendees as well. So I suggest that we do have some broad discussions on the experience of the PCP before we move to the stage of a phase by phase, let's say, analysis of what the lessons learned are. And I would like to ask Louis first, as we have the luxury here of having someone representing a central purchasing body, which for us is interesting, because you might have in these circumstances groups of buyers which are either hospitals doing this directly or national authorities, but the central purchasing body is also a purchaser for larger groups of hospitals. And I would like to ask you, Louis, about your experience here. What were the benefits of a central purchasing body in the case of France, at least, if you can't generalize, being involved in a health-related innovation procurement project such as this, and maybe what were the difficulties you had in this process, since you were not a hospital, and I'm quite sure you had a few.
Yeah. So quickly, just maybe to remind to the participants that yes, the buyer group was composed by 3 pilot hospitals, by 3 buyers. So Uppsala University Hospital, Cordoba University Hospital, and for France it was RESA, so the organization I'm representing, and we are a public central purchasing body specialized in the healthcare sector. So it was a little bit different, and we were the lead procurer of the whole PCP process. So if I start with the benefit, so first for us, why we wanted to participate, it was of course to learn how to use a new public procurement instrument, which is the PCP. We have seen from various feedback you have received from other PCP participants that it is not an easy process to go through, and I can confirm that it is not an easy process to go through. So it offers us the possibility to learn from the project, to learn how to use it, and now I hope in the future to better use this instrument to achieve our objective. The benefit for the buyer group, I think it was to have us as lead procurers, which means that the 2 other buyers of the buyer group, which were the 2 university hospitals, could stay focused really on let's say the medical and technical part of the PCP in the development of the solution, in providing feedback to the contractors, and we were more in charge of the framework of the PCP, doing all the coordination work, and especially during the different tender phase during the PCP process, because you have a tender at the end of phase 0, you launch your PCP tender, but you have also tender step at the end of each phases. So we were in charge of this, and our legal expertise, I think, was valuable to cover all of this. And then I think it is for the contractors a benefit, because as you said, we are a central purchasing body. So basically, if we are happy with the solutions which have been developed, and especially with the versions of the solution that will be finalized before the commercialization phase, I mean, our idea will be to launch a call for tender and to award the contract to 1 or 2 of the solutions, or maybe, as I said, to another digital solutions that have been developed in parallel of our PCP, because this is the risk of a PCP. It's a long process. So when you develop and when we define your challenge, it was 4 years ago for us, and now we are close to the end of the project. So 4 years later, we have 2 innovative solutions that are almost ready. But in parallel, you can have other companies who are working on the development of a solution to address your needs. And in this sense, you never know who will answer your tender. But basically, the idea is to award the contract to 1 or several companies who are proposing an innovative digital solution to monitor chronic pain patients, and so to propose these solutions to a maximum of pain units and hospitals in France first, but also in Europe through our association, which is called HEPA, and which gather healthcare organization, central purchasing body from different countries. And just to finish with this, I think the difficulty for us was more on, let's say, the clinical trial, and also the link we had with the pilot hospital, which was the Lariboisière Hospital, which have accepted to be our pilot hospital for France on a voluntary basis. So they had to dedicate a lot of their time in the PCP process from phase 1 and especially in phase 3 with the clinical study. And in that sense, it was maybe harder for us to manage the daily work of the daily technical work of the PCP, because we were not the organization who is using the solutions.
Thank you very much, Louis. Indeed, we see in most of our PCPs the buyers choosing either from the beginning or from some point early on in the project to centralize the procurement to a lead procurer, although there is also the option of doing it in each one for themselves. So this points maybe that consortia find it more useful to have one entity in charge of this process. You made a valid link with the clinical side, and I want to pass maybe to Jose Carlos and Rolf, who are the experienced members of their own clinical sites here, asking them what in their view was the key lesson learned or takeaway for their organizations in participating in a PCP project from the clinical point of view, and to what degree they had or wanted to cooperate with the other side, whether this was easy or not, or what were the benefits of that. Maybe Jose Carlos could start.
Yeah, hello. Well, for us, I think the main lesson would be the value of in the interdisciplinary collaboration to complete successfully this type of technological projects in healthcare. We think PCP is a valid instrument, but requires a big effort from hospital, from the clinicians. We need IT experts, we need legal, administrative, someone who understands public procurement, especially public procurement of innovation, which is not always easy to find. And so it makes very important, we think, to use it wisely in strategic areas and with very specific needs that cannot be met by other means. We procurers need to understand the requirements in terms of resources, the involvement of the management, very important, to devote the expertise that is necessary and the staff time and at the right moment.
Thank you very much. Indeed, it's true, and we are trying to pass this message even before, while advertising calls as well, that this sort of mix of competencies is necessary, and it can be funded through a PCP, but ideally this should be planned ahead, and there should be serious thought about it. That's what experience has showed us. Rolf, what was Sweden's take from this experience?
I think one of the most important parts was actually phase 0, when we conducted all these interviews with healthcare professionals and patients. We got a very deep understanding on the needs from these stakeholders. And I think from the beginning, I didn't really understand how much we could really benefit from that, but now for sure I do. And I really think we might have benefit even more if we spend some more time on that stage, because it's really important to have everybody on board and understand what the real needs are. The second part is the interaction with the contractors. I think that's also a lesson learned for the future. It's really, really necessary to develop things like this in collaboration, because most of the things we can buy from the shelves now are not developed in collaboration, but from technicians. And this was really from our development was based on the needs from the patients mainly, and to some extent from the clinicians. So that's my most positive experience. What I would have liked even more is actually even more interaction with the contractors. It was difficult when we had in the early phases, when we had many contractors involved, to have the same kind of interaction with all of them. And spending more time on fewer contractors would probably be a better option.
Yes, this is the part of the trade-off for this particular instrument between the close interaction you may have, even if working, for example, with one contractor, or and the competitive side of the procurement, which poses some constraints. This is true. I was happy to hear from you something that I hear from quite a few other PCPs, that participants from the clinical side are really happy to be participating in designing these things, instead of leaving them to legal departments of their procuring organizations simply making purchases, which is something we hear from other projects. Although indeed this is not an easy instrument in any way. Allow me to pass to the suppliers, and I would like to welcome Knut, who hasn't spoken so far. And I had a sort of different questions for them. And the first one, and I would like to ask this to both suppliers actually, is whether they are engaging in other similar instruments or ways of embedding innovation, of co-developing solutions in healthcare with health providers, and how they think that the PCP instrument fares against those, whether it's what the benefits or drawbacks are compared to that. Knut, maybe.
Yeah, I can start that. Thank you for letting us have this feedback in this way. I think it's great to have a session like this. My name is Knut Mårtensson, and I'm representing the Tech for Care group then. And I'm CEO for the MyThings company in Sweden. We are currently working with a project in a kidney clinic locally here, under the framework of the National Innovation Board, Vinnova. And when I'm comparing to this, I see that we, I can also mention that this is a direct successor or built on the components that Carlos mentioned. So it's inherent from Relief, this project anyway, the solution of the project. What I see, I think that we could have a longer and more close contact with the clinic and the clinicians. So if we were able to do that in the beginning, and how they should be how the expert in the clinic could help us to improve the solution, I think that should be very much better. We have this in the project that I mentioned, and that we today have project meetings weekly together with the clinicians, and we can get their experience and their feedback on the solutions that we suggest. I think that's the main feedback I can give on this question.
Thank you, Knut. So early, closer engagement with the clinicians early on. If I could summarize, could I ask Fotis or Andonis, whoever is willing to speak on that, what their experience was in that compared to other ways of co-development they might be engaged with in Gnomon?
Yes, so I can take this this question. So we are not engaged in a similar instrument in the strict way. However, yes, being a company, we have several other ongoing projects with clients. So I can, if I'm allowed, I can somehow compare the experience to that with the clients. So yes, when you have a client, there you have more concrete and refined specifications and requirements. The good thing is that you don't spend too much time on that. So when you have that fixed, then you can go directly and proceed with the development of your solution. On the other hand, there you lack your own personal innovation aspect and creativity aspect. So you are not so much flexible to bring in your innovation activity. Can you still hear me? I got a slow connection signal.
Yes, it was a bit challenging, but we could understand what you were saying. Yes.
Okay, so if it continues, please let me know so that maybe I can switch off my my camera. Then on the other hand, we are also involved in some other European projects, but those are more research oriented. So in that other edge of the spectrum, you have more loose requirements and specs, and you have more flexibility and liberty to design or propose ideas. I think then coming to the PCP instrument, it strikes a good balance between having a set of requirements and specifications in the beginning that gives a direction as to what the suppliers are expected to develop, and also allowing this flexibility for the suppliers to bring in their innovation and their creativity and their know-how. So I like that part. I don't see any drawback, but room for improvements there. And I think it's mentioned before, it's the closer collaboration in the creation process and development process between the suppliers and the procurers, and more specifically the end users, and those being the healthcare professionals and potentially the patients. So having that in place early on from phase 1 or phase 2 will allow to create a product which will be again in time and will match the requirements and the expectations of the end users.
Thank you very much, Antoni. Being conscious of time, I will ask our attendees to bear with us for 10 to 15 minutes more for a discussion per phase. And there I will not maybe go to each person. I will start with asking one of the participants, and then if and the contractors, and then if there are additional comments, please jump in and add, because I think there is it's interesting to go through this process. So there was a consensus during this session that the preparatory phase, we call it phase 0 sometimes, to remind a few of our attendees, if they don't remember, this includes the early identification of the need, and then an open market consultation, the identification of the challenge, and the drafting of the tender documents, which leads to the tender, is very important for the remainder of the project and of the process. Louis, could you summarize maybe what were from the procureur side the main lessons learned regarding the preparatory phase? And I ask Rolf for Jose Carlos to complete maybe with important points if they think something is missing.
Yeah, so as you already mentioned many times, and you repeat it, phase 0, I think it's one of the most important phases of the PCP process, and especially for the buyer groups. I mean, the phase 0 is composed by different steps. You have the need assessment and the need definition. You have the open market consultation when you enter in contact with the suppliers, potential suppliers. Then you have the elaboration of the tender documents, which is not so easy to do when you are public procurers from different European countries. and the PCP tender document is not exactly the same as a classic public tender document. Then you have to do the PCP tender, you have to receive the offer, evaluate the offer based on the criteria you have defined and the evaluation process you have defined. So summarizing the whole phase 0 is quite hard, and we have many lessons to learn and good practices to share. But maybe one of the most important, I think, is about the open market consultation, and which is the moment where you have to interact with the supplier side before launching your tender, the PCP tender. So, of course, the need assessment, need definition is key, and it is really important. But the step right after is this open market consultation and starting the dialogue with the suppliers. So, I think we can recommend all organizations who want to be involved in a PCP project to organize several open market consultation workshop, ideally one physical workshop in each of the countries which are represented in the buyer group, and maybe one online for the suppliers organizations who are far away from the countries that are representing the buyer group. And basically what you do during this workshop is you present the needs you have defined, the common needs, the draft common need. You present the draft structure of your PCP, because you have 3 phases to follow in a PCP process, but this is up to you to define the duration of phase 1, duration of phase 2, duration of phase 3, the budget you will allocate to the suppliers that will be selected, the number of suppliers you want to have in each phases. So the objective of this open market consultation for you is to present what you plan to do in your PCP and to collect feedbacks from the suppliers before writing the final version of your PCP structure. So this is highly important. And in our case, for example, we have changed the duration of phase 1 from 6 months to 4 months. We have extended the duration of phase 2. We have changed the budget dedicated to each suppliers at each phases, more budget for phase 2 with the prototyping, less budget for the phase 1 with the feasibility study. And all of this, we did it thanks to the feedbacks we have received from the suppliers during this different workshop, when they said that, okay, look, we don't need to have 6 months to write a feasibility study to address your challenges, but we need more months to define the first version of the prototypes. So yes, want to insist on this open market consultation, and you should not start the interaction with the suppliers when you evaluate the offers of your PCP tender, but really before, to better structure your PCP.
Louis, thank you for this clear message. I trust that your colleagues might take the floor if they have things to add to that. But I'd like to pass to the suppliers maybe for this phase and ask them, Knut maybe first, and Antonis also, whether they participated in the open market consultation for this project, or they were engaged later through the tender, what their experience was, or if they didn't, would they wish to have done it at an earlier stage than the tender?
I may not get the question really. Is it about the phases that we are?
Yes, whether your company participated already through the open market consultation stage or responded directly to the tender.
Well, we were involved. Maybe Carlos could comment on that as well. But we, yeah, Carlos, you are muted. Okay, maybe I can take it. So we were involved in the beginning as well, from the start of this PCP.
Sorry, here I am. My audio was muted. No, I take the question, Orestes, since we've been initially in charge of the tendering process as the coordinator, and we were not involved in the open market consultation, but paradoxically, we took a lot of benefit out of it, because we had the possibility to have already a lot of well-organized knowledge on the challenge. And instead, regarding the tendering process, our experience was rather smooth and positive. But you have to consider that mostly we were a group of people coming with a scientific background. and not only market background. So for us, the tender was comprehensible, also thanks to the experience we had in generally research projects.
Thank you both for this. Andoni, would you have any feedback on this phase as well, according to your experience?
Thank you, Oresti, for the question. So, to our experience, we haven't really participated actively in the open market consultation, although we have thoroughly checked the results of the open market consultation, which were really comprehensive to us to better understand the 9 challenges that we had to deal with during the tender process. Regarding the different phases of the project, I think that this runs smoothly. We didn't face any issue during the 3 phases. So our main involvement was after the open market consultation.
Thank you. Then, well, tender was launched. You explained during the previous presentations the story. 7 contractors were selected and a solution design started. That's the first phase of the PCP. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I should ask Jose Carlos, for example, what was your experience there and whether you have some recommendations for that stage.
For the phase 0, I mean, for us was quite important to have a centralized PCP process, to have one lead procurer. That was not the original plan in the project, but we quickly understood that it was the best option. It would probably have been a bit more difficult to manage 3 different procurement processes in 3 different countries with different local legislation, etc. So for us, this is very important message to, if you can't do it, centralized.
Rolf, maybe any comments on how you saw solution design?
Yeah, I agree with Jose Carlos. I mean, one interesting experience from this is that I think we are actually more similar than different in the 3 countries, in the respect that we have the same kind of problems with the same kind of patients. There are some difficulties, obviously, like we have different what to say, digital solutions or evolution in our countries. People are more or less used to using these things, but on the other hand, the phase 0 clearly showed us that our patients and our clinicians have the same needs, and I think that's really important.
Okay, I would now like
Oresti, sorry, if
yes.
I may.
I was going to turn to you anyway. Yes.
Okay, sorry. Just to say and to add on top of what my colleague said for phase 1, it's really about the number of suppliers we have selected for phase 1. And after all, I think we should have decided to award the contract to less suppliers. As I said before, you need to finish the PCP project with 2 suppliers. So you need at least to have 2 suppliers at the end of the PCP process, so at the end of phase 3. And because you need to have a selective process through the different phases, it's also important to, let's say, reject one of the suppliers at the end of each phase to select the best one. So I think if we would have to start again, we would only select 4 suppliers for phase 1. This will offer us more time to dedicate to the selected suppliers, with still having the opportunity to reject one at the end of phase 1 if the quality is not good, and with still the insurance to have at least 2 good suppliers at the end of the phase. So that will offer us more time to work with them, more collaboration with them, but also more budget for each suppliers. So I think more resources to provide and to produce a good result and to develop a good solution. So PCP process is long. It requires a lot of time, especially in the first phases, because you have many suppliers to work with and to share the same level of information. which is the tricky part of the PCP. When you say something to one supplier, you have to say the same thing to the other one. So you cannot really provide personalized feedback on the solution. This is why having less suppliers will offer us more time to spend with them and more resources, financial resources for them.
Okay, thank you. I was actually going to pass over to phase 2, maybe to the prototype phase, and ask Louis to summarize the lessons learned from the consortium on that phase as well. I understand you had some iterations and you needed some iterations with your suppliers and with patients before the testing began. How did this go? What do you have to recommend there?
I mean, yes, the general idea of the organization of phase 2 was to have a testing phase at the mid of phase 2 and one last testing phase at the end of phase 2. So just recommendation is just to plan this testing phase, to plan your checking list, your checklist, to make sure that you have a clear protocol to review the solution during this testing and to be able to provide a structure, information, valuable feedback to the contractors so they can use it to improve the solution and to improve the prototypes that will have to be tested again at the end of phase 2. So just a structured process that will allow you the possibility to provide valuable feedback without giving specific advantage to one of the contractors. Again, this is the tricky part of a PCP. It is the necessity to provide the same level of information and do not advantage one of the contractors. This is why it's not really a co-creation process, at least until the end of phase 2. In phase 3, you can have the possibility to really co-create because there is no selection at the end of phase 3. We will finish this relief project with 2 suppliers, end of the project. And then you will have again a competition if you do a tender. But in phase 3, you can have the co-creation you are looking for, but in phase 2, it's still not possible. So to plan this testing of the prototype and to have a clear feedback process to be provided to the contractors.
Thank you, Louis. I think we should turn to phase 3 testing, prolonged to some extent in this project. Some recruitment issues, COVID hit the project. So I would like to ask Rolf and Jose Carlos what the lessons learned were in that phase in their departments.
That's a real tricky question. We have different, we were hit by COVID in different ways. Like my clinic was completely shut down for 6 months, for instance, and I was myself working with COVID patients. So it's really, we're not evaluating a normal process in that way, but I think that what we thought when we planned for a clinical study was that we would have up and running, completely working units to test in a clinical trial. That was not really the case. We had a long period where we had to do these adaptations, etc. And maybe it would have been better to have this phase 3 as a working interaction with the contractors all the way through and evaluating the patient's experiences and the clinician's experiences instead, given the fact that we in phase 2 we were not completely ready with the solutions for a clinical trial, but we didn't know that at that planning stage. So that's maybe you have 2 options. You have to develop the solutions more ready to use and then go into clinical trial, or you should use phase 3 as more co-developing part.
Indeed, the transition between the 2 phases is a tricky issue, and also depends a lot on the specific project and the specific type of challenge and solution that you are trying to develop, I think. Jose Carlos, did you share this experience, or do you have something to add regarding the last phase of the PCP?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Rolf. At the end of the day, you need to involve the same multidisciplinary team for one option or the other. And for us, I mean, we are used to work and to do clinical studies, clinical trials, and we know that they are long, they are expensive, and they are unpredictable. How are they going to evolve? So I would encourage avoiding as much as possible a full clinical study. Maybe do a co-creation and then a short, very short pilot with real patients, of course, using, you can get patients in the co-creation, but also maybe really small pilot without being very ambitious in the results you will get from the clinical study.
Thank you, Jose Carlos.
I really just want to insist on this fact. For me, this is the most important lessons learned and good practices we can extract from the RELIEF project. I want to say, do not do a clinical study in phase 3. I mean, as we said, phase 3, you can organize it as you want. It was our first PCP, so we did not know that, and maybe we were too ambitious of doing a clinical study in phase 3. When you finish the phase 2, you have prototype. You cannot do a clinical study with prototype because technical problem will occur, and so that will just affect the real result of your clinical study. At the end, we obtain good data, good feedback from patients and from the healthcare professionals, and we are quite happy with the result of the clinical study. But really, use the phase 3 of the PCP as a co-creation, a real co-creation phase. You cannot do it in phase 1 and in phase 2 because you still have competition and you need to give this same level of information to the suppliers. In phase 3, you have the possibility to have a more personalized collaboration and interactive collaboration between the healthcare team and the contractors and the solution. So just use this phase as a co-creation phase where you start from the prototypes that have been developed in phase 2 and you just fine-tune it with co-creation workshop between the contractors and the end users. So co-creation workshop with patients, with healthcare professionals. They try the solution, they give you direct feedback, you improve the solution. And so you finish the phase 3, you finish your PCP with an almost finalized solution. In our case, this is not the case because the contractors will need to use the feedback received during the clinical study to update and improve the solution at the end of the PCP process. So the best way is just to use phase 3 as a co-creation phase. And then if you want to do a clinical study, do it outside of the PCP process where you don't have the framework of the PCP, the time constraint, etc. I mean, this is, I think, the most important feedback we can give. Use the PCP instrument as a co-creation tool. And this is the phase 3 which offers you this possibility.
Thank you, Louis. There are two things I want to do. I would like to finish with our suppliers, and then there is also a question we need to address, which I wasn't able to read through the app for some reason. So I would like to turn to Carlos and Knut, whoever would like to take this and tell us what is the lessons learned, or not the lessons learned, but the recommendations they have on their side, either to the procurers or to market players or even to us, if they are willing, either for phase 3 or for the entire process, as you wish.
I can start, Carlos, and you make some comments maybe. I think that it's really a good point to have the real test with patients. I mean, that give the real feedback for the result. And I also think that the size of the groups was good. What we could think about is having a longer phase 2 for development, and or maybe some like two cycles in phase 3, so that we have a feedback and then another test running. It could be like we can have a friendly test first with the groups involved in the PCP, and then the second one with the real patients. This is actually what we are doing in the current project that I mentioned before. We also have We also have like a phase after this that is a commercialization phase, if you like, that we actually look into the real requirements from the buyers, the customers, the end customers, the regions here in Sweden, for instance. What is the requirement? So we have the time and the resources to go through our solution. So it will be like an generation 2 or 3 on the system that will be ready for commercialization. So that, I think, is what should be very valuable. Carlos?
No, I think you covered it all. The only point that we learn also is that you really need to have a partner close to the recruitment site, because anyway there are some personalization, customization needs to be done at local level, and most of all the vicinity, when you have a prototype that you want to market, the vicinity to the customer is a factor that is a success or potential uptake after the test.
Maybe this is a limitation of the PCP process, but I should really like to have a closer contact with the clinicians and the patients. I mean, the feedback from them should be very valuable, because I didn't know really if the clinicians used the system. Did they understand how to use it and had the time to put in all the information that was update the information, I should say, for the patients during the test.
Thank you both. Indeed, I think there are good reasons for the separation between the PCP and the PPI through this instrument. There are others, like the innovation partnerships, which embed both processes, and of course your own ways of doing things at your local settings. But indeed there is a valley between the PCP and the PPI, and we do encourage nowadays PCPs to plan for a post-phase 3 period in the duration of the grant, so that additional work and taking stock of the results of phase 3, as well as a preparation for the commercialization exposed can be done. Of course, if a PPI follows, there's also an additional period in that phase 0 of the PPI where the market can respond, but then the group is enlarged to everybody who can provide a solution through a PPI in our own instruments. And there, maybe if there are additional functionalities or improvements that the procurers want, they can be part of the tender, but it will then be up to the competitors to not co-create, but develop the functionalities to respond to that tender. Also other competitors from the enlarged market. So indeed there are benefits and limitations too. Antonio or Foti, your lessons before we close.
Yes. So I'd like to mention 2 recommendations, if I'm allowed. One for the procurers and the other one for the European Commission and the general structure of the PCP. So for the procurers, and I think it was discussed quite thoroughly today and also mentioned by Knut and Carlos, it's very important during the development of the product to spend and have quality time with the end users. So these are the healthcare professionals in our case and the patients. As early as we are in contact with those stakeholders, and as more time as we are allowed to spend, the better the end result will be and the closer it will match the expectations. The second recommendation regarding the general structure of the PCP, I think we would appreciate some more activities related to the commercialization. And what I mean, I think the ultimate goal of this instrument is to have an end product which is commercialized. So either as a sub-phase of phase 3 or a short follow-up phase in phase 4, there will be envisioned some activities strictly related to the commercialization. This can be, for example, more events organized, bringing the suppliers and the end customers in contact, either by matchmaking events, one-to-one interviews, or participating collectively as, for example, Relief project in relevant exhibitions, industry focused exhibitions, where again we can get in contact with potential customers. And other activities can be more or help that SMEs companies can get and suppliers are related to further developing their business plans or getting any support regarding to legal aspects and legal advice, which are also important and can be also costly for SME companies to develop themselves. So I think that would be my two most important recommendations, one for the procurers and the other one for the European Commission as the structure of the PCP.
Thank you, Antonio. And the latter is very valid for us and well said. Maybe there is work for us to do in connecting the dots for all of you who participate in such programs and particularly projects on what is there to complement an experience like Relief or bridge this phase 3 end point to the commercialization through also, like I said, what the European Innovation Council does in the new programming period and what Horizon Europe will do and other funding or networking opportunities. And maybe we should present this more clearly and in a more comprehensive way than simply selling the PCP and the PPI. So point taken here. Thank you for being so patient and staying with us. I think we should read at least one question, the one we promised to answer, unless it was answered already. Louis, maybe could you?
Yeah, I go through, Mr. Birol. Thank you for all of your questions. I will go quickly through the question. First one was for the procurers. So how did you deal with the leftover budget from a previous phase? Was it added to the next phase? So no, we did not change the budget, maximum budget allocated to the supplier on each phases. It was defined in the tender document and we did not change it. So because we have selected 7 suppliers in phase 1 instead of 8, which was the original plan, we have remaining budget, but that will not be spent, and so that will not be reimbursed by the European Commission. So no, we did not do that. We could have done that by signing an amendment to the framework agreement and to change this, but we did not do that. Other question for procurers: having gone through the PCP process and looking back, would you have done anything different or more in the technical phase 0? Quickly, I think we would have defined less challenges. We have defined 9 challenges, so I think define less challenges to be addressed, or at least classify them by the most important one, and maybe the sub challenges would have give the opportunity to the contractors to be more focused on the key challenges to be addressed, and maybe optional challenges to be addressed would have been the better structuration of the need. Definition of concrete use cases explaining the current problematics. So we did it in phase 2. I mean, we have provided to the contractors use cases describing the current situation in our healthcare organization, illustrating the different challenges, different needs we have defined, but I think it would have been good to do it in phase 0 to give a maximum concrete information to the contractors to work on the development of the solution. And I think a better structuration of the PCP calendar, taking in consideration the tender phase between 2 phases, because again, you have to think that at the end of phase 1, even if you have done the assessment of the feasibility study from the 7 contractors, even if you have the 4 best feasibility study that you have assessed, you still have to launch a call-off for phase 2, and these 7 contractors have to submit an offer, and you have to evaluate their offer and select the best one for phase 2. So the people, I mean, the contractors you select for the next phase are not the one who have obtained the best result in the previous phase, but the one who makes the best offer to the next phase. So we could also recommend you to include in your evaluation criteria from one phase to the other one, maybe the score obtained by the contractors is the result of the previous phase. And the 2 other questions are for you, Orestes, but this question are like book. I mean, it's Mr. Birov, it's a very long question. So I don't know, Anna, maybe if you can share the screen so Orestes can see the question, or I don't know how you want to proceed. Or Anna, if you can put the question on the screen.
Maybe, I don't know, Sophia, if you can.
Sophia.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure if I read this with my accent, you will understand what you have to say.
Your accent is just fine, by the way.
I'm here. Could you repeat the question, please?
Can you
just can you put on the script the question? I mean the question section.
In the screen, the question section is impossible to have it visible for everybody.
Okay,
yeah,
so let's do the following. Then either we read it, or being conscious of time, I have to confess, I know Mr. Birov because he's a member of the innovation procurement community. So please transmit those in writing, and we're going to answer them.
Okay, perfect. We will do this. Thank you very much, Orestes. And yes, thank you very much for all the participants. Thank you for the coordination of this roundtable, Orestes. I just want to inform the participants that you will receive the PowerPoint presentation, and under these good practices, etc., we have included all the lessons learned, good practices and recommendation on the slides from the procurement, from the buyer group perspective, and from the supplier's perspective. So if you want to obtain more detail lessons learned, good practices about the PCP process and what we have learned, just go through the PowerPoint presentation and you will find all of this information to be used in the future if you want to be involved in a PCP project. And now I leave you the floors maybe to conclude the, this final conference.
Thank you, Luis. I think we have a very interesting discussion, a lot of information. We hope that it was useful for the attendants, for those that are interested in participating in a PCP process, but also for these potential customers of the solutions developed in the project. As Luis has said, all the information will be shared with you through the PPT and also publishing the information in the website. And I would like to thank all of you speakers for the interesting information, attendees for your patience and interest also in asking questions. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Bye. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.